Have you ever been playing JToH and you just think to yourself, man, I wish there was a way to make this game more annoying? Well, that's what I'll be doing today. I'm going to be doing random dares created by my viewers for the sake of YouTube content. There will also be one big dare that applies to the whole recording session. So the big dare that I'm going to be doing for this whole video is every time I pass a floor, I'm going to eat one chip. But if I forget, I got to restart the tower. By the way, I just released my own Discord server, and if you want to help me with ideas for videos like this, I'll leave a link in the description for you to join. So the first dare we're going to be attempting to do is beating Toast, but with the on-screen keyboard. So if you don't know what the on-screen keyboard is, it's basically a virtual keyboard that you can press with your mouse. This means that every time I want to move, I have to manually press W, A, S, and D, or space. I'm not even sure if this one's going to be possible, but let's try it out. Yeah, so not even 30 seconds into the challenge, I started having issues with the on-screen keyboard. What? Okay, apparently I can't use the on-screen keyboard to move my camera. Whenever I press the arrows, it just doesn't do anything. I can still use alignment keys though, so I think that'll work. I also quickly figured out that using shift was going to be a major problem as well. So I was planning on using a little bit of shift lock, but whenever I press shift on the keyboard, it kinda just locks my camera onto Roblox and I can't get out of it without pressing shift on my actual keyboard. Even with this problem, I still did use shift multiple times throughout the run. And I know it's technically cheating because I'm not supposed to use my actual keyboard, but honestly I didn't really have a choice. Anyways, coming up on floor 1 is one of the hardest jumps in the entire challenge. Usually, long jumps like these aren't hard at all. But the issue with the on-screen keyboard is that you can't press multiple keys at once. This means that I had to press space and then a direction key instead of the two keys at the same time. But after many failed attempts, I was finally able to make the jump with very fast mouse movement and good positioning. Finally. The rest of the floor was going pretty smooth until I got to the X pusher section. The way that X pushers work is when you walk forward with your character, the pusher launches forward and takes your character with it. And once you stop moving on the platform or get off of it, the pusher returns to its original position. Most of the time. X pushers actually have a weird quirk where sometimes they'll stay still even when you stop moving. I use this to be able to jump off the X pusher without holding forward. I'm pretty sure trying to do this jump without this strategy wouldn't have worked at all. And now that we made it to floor 2, it's time to eat the first chip. I'll put a counter for how many chips I've eaten throughout the whole session in the top left. Anyways, floor 2 starts with this invisible path that I take to cross this small gap, as well as a door that's locked by 4 button platforms. In order to open the door, I need to go around the floor collecting all 4 buttons. The last button is the hardest because it has falling platforms that will easily send me to 1 if I'm not fast enough. I eventually got back to the jump again, but not before I ate another chip. When I eventually got back, I missed a spacebar press with my mouse and ended up falling on the first platform again. This was another one of the hardest sections of the tower, and I had to test to make sure it was actually possible. While practicing, I also figured out that you can actually high jump to skip the X pusher section, so this part will be much faster from now on. Yes! Finally! After a few tries, I eventually got it and was able to proceed with the tower. The rest of the floor were just some simple jumps inside of this little box area, bringing me to floor 3. Oh my god, yes, finally. The entirety of floor 3 is a speed section, which is pretty short. None of the jumps really posed a challenge, so I was able to complete it on the first try. Yes! Floor 4 already? Floor 4 was the first floor to have a spinner on it, and I thought it was going to be really hard, but it actually turned out to be quite easy. There was also the skip that I attempted later on the floor, and I thought I could save myself if I missed it, but I was wrong and fell to floor 1. The next time I got to floor 4, I apparently forgot to eat a chip. I actually didn't even notice this until I started editing the video, and it kinda sucks because it means that this really good run that got all the way to near the end of 5 was invalid, and I didn't even know it. However, I'll still go over the strategies that got me to that point. Later on floor 4, I had to do this rope platform that seemed pretty hard, but it actually turned out to be fine and I didn't really have many issues with it. After climbing up the ladder and doing an easy shover section, there was another X pusher which I had to use the strategy on again in order to reach the next section. Then, after that, it was just some simple jumps to reach floor 5. For the most part, floor 5 was very simple. That was until about halfway through the floor, where there was a long series of difficult jumps leading to floor 6. It was at this point where I fell, accidentally pressing the S key instead of the A key. Even though that was a really hard fall, I still had a lot of motivation to keep playing, given how far I had already gotten. So it was time to lock in. So, I finally made it to floor 6, and I forgot to eat a chip. I don't really know how this happened, and it's honestly really sad, because this was actually the run that I beat the challenge on. Anyways, if we just want to pretend that that didn't happen, next up we have to get to this spinner. Normally, you'd have to jump across these large gaps, which I don't think would have been possible with the on-screen keyboard. Luckily, the spinner actually has an invisible teleporter underneath it, and we can hit that from the second platform. The rest of floor 6 was fairly easy, just with some bounce pads and other simple platforming. After reaching floor 7, I ate a chip, and then took this transparent truss to skip most of the floor. The rest of floor 7 was also very easy, just with a small balloon section and a darkness section which I took this invisible path on. After reaching floor 8 and eating another chip, I prepared to take another truss that would skip a lot of floor 8. This skip had kind of a risky jump, but it turned out to be fine. Before continuing though, I ended up falling back to 7. I also aligned myself to do a walking truss flick on the next section in order to skip it. Now looking back at the footage, I think it would have been much easier just to go the normal way, but in the moment I thought this was the best idea. Now we're at floor 9, and at this point we pretty much beat the tower. All we have to do is take this secret teleporter underneath the button section, and then we're immediately at floor 10. And as many of you know, floor 10 is just a truss to the wind pad.
Oh my god. Finally, dude. That was like the hardest thing. That sucks. I never want to open this stupid virtual keyboard again.
In the end, I gave this challenge a difficulty rating of 7 and an enjoyability rating of 2. The total time this challenge took to complete was just about 2 hours, but would you believe me if I told you that the next challenge took even longer? The next dare was to beat Tower of True Skill in first person, and initially I thought this challenge was going to be super easy, like it's just Tower of True Skill, something I've beaten many times. But somehow, this challenge actually took about 3 hours to complete. Thankfully though, this section of the video won't take up nearly as much time as the Toast Dare, because there's not really that many interesting things to talk about with this dare. Also, just as I was about to start recording, some guy joined the server with a gigantic cat skybox item that literally encased the entire map. I don't even know how this kind of stuff gets allowed on Roblox, but it was honestly really funny to see. For floors 1 and 2, there honestly wasn't really much to talk about. They all played pretty much normally, except for the occasional blind jump. I should also mention that I literally had to drop the chip dare during this challenge, because at the time of recording I had no chips. For floor 3, I did a small high jump skip at the start, and also some more blind jumps later on the floor. Floor 4 is where things really start to pick up with its invisible section. This section feels much more awkward in first person compared to third. I ended up falling here a lot because I kept forgetting about the one small wrap you needed to do at the end of the section. After a few more invisible platforms, we're finally onto floor 5. The entirety of floor 5 is fading parts which you need to do quickly so you don't fall. There really isn't that much interesting to talk about on floor 5, except for the one time that I fell into the kill brick pit and then had to fall to floor 3 in order to not die. After this, we're approaching floor 6, which has the hardest jump in the entire challenge and is the main reason that this took 3 hours. Most people who've beaten Tower of True Skill know about the long jump on floor 6, but it is indescribably hard when you're trying to do it in only first person. I had to jump sideways and then turn midair in order to climb on the part. Over time, I would get better and better at this jump, but when I was getting to it in early sessions, I would only make it about 30% of the time. The only other notable thing on floor 6 was this hard climb jump near the end of the floor, and from there, it was very easy to get to floor 7. For the most part, 7 was very easy. I didn't really know how to go about doing this jump, so I ended up just high jumping it later on in other runs. Aside from that, nothing interesting ever really happened on floor 7, except for this one time when I failed a pretty easy head hitter. And not long after, we were on floor 8. The majority of floor 8 is kill bricks, which means you have to go to these small healing platforms to replenish your health. So most of this floor was just waiting around, except for this one time when I got caught between a gap and died. At the end of floor 8 is just some simple head hitters to go to 9. And if you know anything about Tower of True Skill, you know that 9 is probably the hardest floor. The main issue with floor 9 comes with these 2 jumps at the beginning of the floor. The first one is this really wide wraparound, which is already really hard, but it's even worse with first person because you can't see the other side. The other one is this high jump wrap, which is hard even if you're in third person. This is because it's pretty inconsistent whether you get enough height to make it or not. There are other difficult jumps on this floor, but the walls are so low that you can pretty much high jump everything. The last thing standing in your way between floor 10 is this long wrap at the end of the floor. And once I did that, we were finally onto floor 10. Now, if you know Tower of True Skill, you might be asking yourself, how the hell are you going to do the head hitters? Because if you know Tower of True Skill, you know that the head hitters at the end of the tower are notorious for ending people's runs. I actually came up with a pretty good strategy to avoid doing one of the 2 hard head hitters at the end. Let's fucking go. Yes! And with that, the dare is complete. In the end, I give this dare a difficulty rating of 6 and an enjoyability rating of 5. The last dare I chose for this video was doing Tower of Lanophobia, but with a gigantic, distracting avatar. The real challenge that comes from this dare is not being able to use first person, which is almost essential for doing the tightropes in this tower. This means that I would basically be having to guess where I was standing the whole time while playing the tower, especially on the tightropes. I ended up making a custom avatar for this challenge, and it looks like this. The way this tower works is that it's filled with tightropes, and the tightropes get thinner as you progress through the tower. This means that the earlier floors are really easy, and the later floors are extremely hard. Somehow, I'm gonna have to do all these super thin tightropes with this avatar, which hopefully shouldn't take too long. Thankfully, it didn't take too long. This challenge took a little over an hour, which is much faster than the other 2 I did in this video. But much like the Tower of True Skill dare, there isn't really much to talk about aside from the later floors. I only ever ended up falling on floors 8, 9, and 10 because I couldn't see where I was on the tightrope. Pretty much all of the early floors were a breeze, and the only awkward part was the outside section on floor 3. Floor 9 was extra stressful because it had an outside section with many tightropes on it. I came very close to falling on this multiple times, but I don't think I ever actually fell. I fell many times on floor 10, however, because it has the thinnest tightropes, and one small misinput could easily make you fall. Thankfully, I actually came up with a pretty consistent strategy that involved coming onto the tightrope at an angle. And after many failed attempts on 10, I was finally able to reach the final part of the tower, which is a dropper down to the wing pad. I did it! I know this section wasn't as long as the others, but I'm kind of in a rush to get this video out in time, and like I said earlier, there wasn't much to talk about for this challenge. For the ratings, I'm gonna give this dare a 4 out of 10 for both difficulty and enjoyment. And that marks the end of all the dares that I will be doing in this video. If you would like to give me ideas for dares in future videos, or help with other video topics, feel free to join my Discord server using the link in the description. Anyways, that's all for this video. Thank you as always for watching, and have a good day.